My guest this week is a woman whose ambition aligns in so many ways to my own, and the reasons why I started the With Tracy podcast, to give a voice and platform for entrepreneurs to share their story and insight, to support and encourage others. Hey, this lady went all out and launched a magazine. Olivia Marocco studied interior architecture, but ended up traveling the world and building her career as a photographer. As her portfolio and reputation grew, so did the women she was meeting from a myriad of cultures, nationalities, and business backgrounds. And it's thanks to having met these women, listening to their experiences and challenges on how to create their own business identities, that the idea of setting up a magazine, Brand You, began to take root. She found many of the business magazines too corporate and did not cater for female entrepreneurs and small business owners. She longed for a publication, in her words, specialising in the very best of must-have branding and business essentials, all wrapped up in a creative, positive, friendly place. Brand specialist business experts, forward thinkers could meet and share. And like a number of business ideas, it took a pandemic and a lockdown for Olivia to find the time to not only develop and create, but bring her life, her vision. Of dual French and English nationality, she shared her life between both countries, but currently resides here in the UK. I'm excited to be part of a time when women are brave and creating under a new business backdrop with bold expression, where we celebrate diversity and use our unique gifts to make a real difference. I am delighted to welcome and chat today to Olivia Marocco, founder and editor-in-chief of Brand You magazine. Hi, Olivia, and thank you so much for being on the With Tracy podcast today.
Hi, Tracy. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very excited about our little conversation today.
So, Olivia, before we get started, you started in France, and it's always lovely to give a bit of background on my guest for my listeners. So would you like to tell us a little bit more?
Yes, so I'm, like you said, I'm of dual nationality. So my mother is English and my dad's French, but I was born in France. And I had a very lovely childhood. I was raised in a little village on the north suburbs of Paris. I think there was about 5,000 inhabitants, so quite a small village. But I grew up in a very loving family. My French grandparents had 12 children. So I've got 12 uncles and aunts, and I'm part of 35 cousins and 40 plus kids of cousins. So we grew up very much in a very loving and dynamic family environment. So lovely childhood. And then unfortunately, my parents separated when I was 14. And that's when I had the opportunity to come and live in the UK. So I followed my mom, obviously. And that's when we moved to the UK, in Southampton, especially. And then that's where my mom's from, Southampton originally.
Oh, right.
So I moved to the UK when I was 14, and then had a couple of hard years, really, to settle. And then that's where sort of the UK life began, really.
And you studied architecture, didn't you?
Yes. So my dad was an architect.
Ah.
So I grew up wanting to be an architect, I just wanted to be like my dad. But that didn't quite happen because I probably got to about 16 years old and I realized that studying pure architecture was too long, too academic, and not maybe creative enough for me. So I decided to go into the next best thing, which was interior architecture. And it was still a hard 4 years of university because it wasn't all about decorating and pretty cushions. It was still very structural.
Yeah.
But it was all about interior. So I studied that up in London, Middlesex University, and got my degree. I don't know how, looking back, but I got my degree, and I was even the first member of the family to even get a degree. So that was quite an achievement back then.
For you. Yeah, absolutely good for you. But then you went into photography. So how did that kind of move from the interior architecture into photography?
Yes, so welcome to my life. I just keep following paths that come and present themselves to me. But so to cut a long story short, while I was at university and I was studying interior design, I very soon realized that that's not where I wanted to make a career of. At the time, we were learning how to draw on, drawing boards. There was no computers at the time, and the idea of spending the rest of my life behind a drawing board was quite frightening. So I knew that that's not where I wanted to sort of pursue. Photography at the time was just a hobby. I didn't actually know that you could make a career out of photography. It just wasn't my world at the time. But I was a very passionate photographer and did a lot of that for myself during university. But the opportunity arrived after my degree. So one of my biggest passion or my biggest quest was to travel the world. So once I graduated university, I went and traveled the world, went backpacking for about 18 months, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, came back to London, and then I worked a couple of years. So just go back a little bit, while I was at university, a few key events happened while I was studying that introduced me to the world of events. With a lot of my friends, we were organizing quite a lot of events during our studies, which kind of opened the door to what it was like to work in an event industry, working with teams of other creative people, and all with the same sort of common goal of creating some kind of special events. So having had a little taster of the events industry, when I came back to London, I knew that I needed to go towards the events world. And so the best way I knew how to do that was to try and get into a marketing department somewhere, with no marketing background whatsoever. But I got a job as a marketing assistant. And for this company, I worked a few years with them and learned quite a lot on marketing, PR, advertising through working with this company. And then by then I was reaching 30. And I had my first life crisis at 30, and I needed to change everything. So an opportunity came up for me to return back to France when I was 30 and to settle down in Nice, which I did.
Beautiful part of the world. I love it down there.
It's very beautiful. And by then I had been in the UK for 16 years. So I felt the need to come back to France after 16 years being here, and also the need for sunshine. So when the opportunity came to move to Nice, I also with that had the opportunity to go and work on a very big, large event. It was a 3 weeks event for IBM. And IBM had commissioned this local photographer to build a team of photographers to cover all the activities of this event. That photographer, he's from Marseille, and he didn't really speak a lot of English. So what he needed was an assistant to help him communicate better with the client while on site, and also manage the timetable of all his photographers. So he asked me if I wanted to come along. He knew I was a keen photographer, and he knew I wanted to go into the events world. So I just jumped on the occasion. And next thing I know, I'm in Monaco and I'm working for this big event for IBM. And within seconds, I looked at his planning and I was like, oh my God, you don't have enough photographers to cover all these various events happening. So next thing I know, he gives me a digital camera, which I've never used before. And he goes, well, there you go. You're a keen photographer. You can go with this group and follow them and take photos. So that then led me on, this was in March, this event. So it led me on to follow this group who were going up in the mountains doing snowmobile. And I had to follow them and take photos of this group, which I did. I don't think there was one decent photo looking back, because I had no idea how to even work the camera. And all he said is, just go on automatic and you'll be fine. And then, but I did come back down from that mountain, and I knew I had the click. I knew this is what I wanted to do. I want to be a corporate event photographer, and I want to travel the world with it. And that's how it started.
Now that sounds very glamorous. Because I think, you know, when people go, oh, I'm a photographer and I travel the world and I've done this, we always kind of have this, preconception in our head that it's all wonderful and first class travel and wonderful hotels and everything. Was it really like that? What were your experiences?
So it was like that. I never flew first class. No, it was like that for me, and I'll tell you why. Because it's two very different experience being a photographer at an event and being part of the event team and working there, in comparison with my colleagues who were organizing the event and working on the event. They never saw, outside of a hotel. Basically, they went on location, they would work on the event, and a lot of the time they didn't really see anything else. Whereas as a photographer, my role was always to be where the action was. So it was very glamorous, and I loved it. I managed to go on some amazing destination. I went to Mauritius, South Africa, America, pretty much everywhere in Europe. Where else I probably forget half the locations I've been to, and working on some quite prestigious events with lots of budgets, so clients like IBM, McDonald's, Unilever, the big brands. So it was very glamorous for me because it ticked all my boxes. I got to travel the world, stay in some amazing places, see some of the most amazing things that an ordinary tourist may not have had the opportunity to see. I've seen palaces, I've seen celebrities, I've even photographed like the Prince of Monaco many times. So it was very glamorous, and I was 30, I was full of energy, I was very passionate, and so it all felt like a very glamorous lifestyle, but hard work, don't get me wrong, it's extremely hard work. Clients in the events world are very demanding. So, I would cover a full day event, day and night, and they would want the photos on day 5 at 9 a.m. in the morning. So you had to work through the night, editing and delivering the photos at the speed of light. So it was very intense while you were at the event, but it was a lot of fun, and I loved it. I actually loved it. And it didn't come to an end, but it got disrupted in 2008, this whole glamorous traveling lifestyle, because of the economic crash. And so in 2008, yes, the whole of the events industry just came to a standstill. And I remember this was, I think, 3 months. It happened 3 months before I was meant to go to Oman. I was gutted. I was so bored. I was 3 weeks on an event in Oman, and it got cancelled. So that's when the first lesson really for me was that as a photographer, I had all my egg in one basket. Like, that's all I did was brand photography, corporate photography. And when that all came to a standstill, then I was in a bit of a pickle. So that's when I then slowly pivoted my business and went into wedding photography.
But in the introduction that I said that you based the business that you're running now and your magazine on a lot of the women that you met and different cultures and nationalities. At what point then did that start? Was that when you were doing the, event photography and sort of traveling the world, or was that something that sort of happened after that?
Yeah, that sort of happened afterwards. What I was doing, the corporate, it was very much corporate, and it kind of started when I pivoted my business into the wedding photography. So there, I was starting to look at my business quite differently, and I had a whole different brand that I had to build, really. And I also had an aim was to very quickly move my wedding photography business into sort of a high-end weddings in the south of France. And so with that started my journey of meeting lots of smaller businesses, the wedding planners, the florists, the makeup artists, and so even though at the time I didn't do a lot with that information, but that's when I started really, meeting all these wonderful women that were all working very hard, building their careers, and we would share the struggles and we would share the wins. And that's when I started meeting this kind of women. And then we're going forward 10 years, I made a decision to come back to the UK. I think it was 5 years ago. And with that change, I decided to pivot slightly my business again and started launching the personal brand photography side. And again, that's when it all kind of came together, because by doing all these brand photography shoots, then I was meeting more and more small business owners.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Most of them being women, and that's where the little idea started to come into my head. But I wasn't sure what it was going to look like or how it was going to take form at that stage. But that's when I started meeting all these wonderful business owners.
You eventually decided to take the step, didn't you, in the middle of or the beginning of the pandemic? I've interviewed someone else who started the business in the pandemic, and they kind of said, I don't know if I was crazy or not, but it just landed up being at that time and they decided to just go for it. So for you, obviously it was a similar thing, though you've been thinking about it, but what eventually made you think, this is it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now?
Yeah. I think two reasons. One is I didn't have much choice. And by that, I mean that as a photographer, again, when the pandemic came, my whole business just stopped overnight. So corporate, wedding and brand shoots just all came to a standstill. So all of a sudden, like I said many times, is after a little cry and a little panic of going, oh my God, what's just happened? I actually started to have more time to think. And this was when I really started to think, okay, Olivia, what is it that you want to do now for the next 20 years of your career? You know, I am sort of on my way towards 50, and that provokes a lot of, you know, thoughts in your mind going, you know, do I want to be a wedding photographer when I'm in my 50s and 60s? Do I want to be running around after 21-year-old brides? Do I want to be jumping on planes? Is this the kind of lifestyle that I want? So on one hand, internally, I knew that I needed to make some changes going forward in my life. And then, and that's when the brand photography side of the business came in. I thought that would be a way to pivot away from weddings and away from corporate and change that. But when the pandemic came and everything stopped. I gave myself a lot of time to think, okay, Olivia, this is the occasion. This is the occasion. You've got no jobs going on at the moment. You've got a lot of time. So what is it that you really want to do? And then I got involved with another little project called Brand You 2020 at the beginning of lockdown with a colleague of mine who's a brand designer. Unfortunately, that project didn't last more than a few months because with the pandemic, my colleague had 3 kids and a husband and 5 chickens, and she just couldn't give the time to develop. So I decided to take over that ownership of what we were doing, change the model slightly. So instead of being chat shows and interviews, because I'm a creative, I thought I need to do something more creative. And that's where the idea in my head of the magazine came along. I was like, okay, so why not do a magazine?
Wow. You know, and that, you know, in itself for me, is a massive undertaking. You know, that is a big step and responsibility to take on a magazine. You know, I don't need to tell you what's involved. Maybe you can share with us what's involved, because I kind of have my visions, having, you know, worked a bit on not really magazines, but, you know, small magazines, a newsletter, but they were like a little magazine catalogue. And I just know how much time that took. And I had a team of people.
Yeah.
So would you like to share with us then about your sort of experiences and how it's been for you?
The day I decided to do a magazine, I don't think I had any idea what I was getting myself into. That's for sure. I was just blinded by the idea of doing something that was designed and visually beautiful, but I had no real idea of how much work that would entail. But when I decided to do the magazine, because I was very much into the whole brand with the brand photography and meeting lots of brand designers, I thought that I was going to create a magazine about personal branding. And when I launched the first issue, that's what it was. It was a magazine about personal branding for small businesses, men and female at the time. While I was working at, I soon realized that just talking about personal branding would be very limiting going forward. So that's when I decided to slowly introduce the business side and then the lifestyle side and make it a little bit more consistent, and looking at the whole picture of running your own business. But the magazine was still for men and women. And I had a lot of problems with that because I was very divided. I was like, is my magazine, does it talk to men? Does it talk to women? Is it too pink? Is it too blue? And lots of conflicting, thoughts in my head to try and make that magazine of interest to both sexes. But then 5 months down the line, I started looking at the stats of who were actually downloading the magazine. I realized that 99.99% of people interacting with the magazine were women. So that's when I decided to have my first little rebrand, change the magazine, change its concept, change its readership, and focus suddenly on small businesses, female entrepreneurs. And I felt very liberated from that. So that's kind of how the magazine came about. Now the workload just gets more and more every month because the magazine is getting more mature in its content and its, but I do have a bit of a team to help me. I'm not doing it by myself. Otherwise, I think I'd be a robot or an alien if I, So I have got an editorial team, and there's 2 women who are there with me every month who look after all the content. So we've got different styles of articles in the magazine. We've got the magazine, the concept is it's all contribution. But within that, we've got different styles of article. We've got Q&As, we've got inspirational editorial pieces, and we've got educational style pieces. So depending on which article, for example, the educational one, this is when an expert comes in, writes a piece of about 2,000 words with the aim to educate our readers. So the expert will send us the content. I will then pass it on to my editorial team. They will do their magic by proofreading it, making sure that it reads well, sure it's not missing an intro and an outro. And they're going to get it all looking pretty and all in its final stages. And then it comes back to me, and then I start to design the layout of the article in the magazine. If it's the inspirational piece, and that's the key piece of our magazine, and that demands quite a lot of work. So the idea is to invite an expert on to share the bigger vision, thought leadership kind of article and inspirational piece. So that starts with me having a Zoom chat like we're having now, recording our conversation and talking about what we're going to talk in the article. And I will record it, and then I will sit down with my editor, Pauline. We'll listen to the chat again, and then together we'll come up with a series of questions. We then send the questions to the experts. The expert comes back with their answers, and then I then pass it on to a creative writer who will then turn the piece into an editorial style. So that's another path of work. And then, and if not, then we've got business Q&A, and that's just, again, same principle. I have a chat with the contributor. We figure out what the angle of the Q&A is going to be. I then work with Pauline. We work on the questions. I send it back to the contributor, and they send it back to me. And that stays as a Q&A in the article. So there's, depending on which article, there's lots of different ways of working, but I couldn't do it with my team without my team. So I've got a Prue, who's really our editorial support and proofreader. I've got Pauline, who's the editor, and I've got Amber, who's our creative writer. So they're my gold team. Couldn't do it without them.
I'm glad that you're not there doing it all on your own, because I was thinking, how is she managing? No. Still looking so glamorous and wonderful.
I don't know about glam today, but yeah. A lot of what I do is obviously managing the business, but doing all of the research. And that takes a lot of time, researching the contributors for future issues, all the communication with our experts, Zoom chats, and all the emails forwards and backwards. I do all the design of the magazine, and then I also do all the social media, the promotion. I do everything else. But so the editorial is all in my editorial team.
And how many editions are you now? How many editions have you printed?
So I'm now working on issue 14, which will be our January issue.
Wow.
The first 5 issues were still the old magazine style, and they were just a free download because I was launching. I just wanted people to see what the magazine looked like. And then once I changed the style and the cover, from then on, a couple months later in May, I launched the magazine on print subscription. And that's the first month that we went to print. So as far as I'm concerned, my magazine is only as old as May this year. That's when it all kind of began properly for me. But I am on issue 14, which is our January issue. Very exciting.
Yes, well, congratulations. And I have to say that the most recent, as a subscriber now, I would say all the editions are brilliant. And anyone listening or watching, please do check out Brand New magazine, because I love the colours, I love the graphics and the creatives. I mean, it really is a magazine that I think you want to delve into. You know, from the moment you see the cover, and you know, I get mine online. I'd like to tell everyone you can have it, you know, just online, comes straight into your inbox, which is fantastic. But even that, you know, I get it and I'm like, oh, turn the page, I've got to turn the next page, you know.
Oh, that's nice. That's
yeah,
great.
and also I would say it's really personal, some great stories. I think, you know, what you're doing there is, it all feels very individual and personal. I think a lot of magazines feel like you've read the same thing over again. I think at the moment, every edition I've had of Brand New magazine doesn't feel like that at all. It always feels fresh, which is fantastic. So I do urge everyone, and we'll ask you later about how people can get hold of your magazine. So Olivia, you know, that sounds really full on. And one question I get asked a lot when I'm talking to people is that, you know, when starting up a business or running a business, regardless of what stage it is, but quite often they can feel incredibly overwhelmed because they have to do so much themselves. So I wanted to ask you if that's happened to you, and if what's your mechanism? How do you kind of deal with that?
Well, it's funny because prior to making this magazine, I don't think I ever felt overwhelmed. It was never something I felt in my life before as a photographer or so on. This time around, this magazine is a lot of work, and I can now feel quite easily overwhelmed, and I have to admit it. It's not weakness, it happens. And I've got periods of the month when I'm overwhelmed by emails, I'm overwhelmed by things. And so my secret, I don't know if I'm an expert in that, but I think I need to keep telling myself, Olivia, I can only do as much as I can do myself. So don't stress, you know, have your to-do list, try to prioritize when there's too many things coming on at once, and have patience. What I wanted to do with this business is I don't want to build a 5-minute wonder business. This has to last for the next 20 years until my retirement. So at this stage, don't feel like you need to do everything in a hurry. Build your business step by step and properly, and make sure that the foundations are done correctly. And don't feel pressured to go as fast as you think you need to go as fast. And, you know, I get questions. So how's your business going, and how many subscribers have you got? Like, people are expecting, oh, well, I've got 100,000 subscribers and I've only just launched 5 months ago, you know. And don't feel like don't fall into that pressure. Just say, my business is growing steadily and I'm doing all the right steps at the right time. And at some point, I will reap the benefit from that. So feeling overwhelmed, I think we all feel that. Just take a step back and do it at your own pace. I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think, I mean, I've just, you know, so many women, or people in business, you know, men and women, you know, I know there are many times when they, you know, it just all feels so much, you know, the responsibility, regardless if you've got teams or not. And it's just, you know, everyone's got their kind of coping mechanisms on that, I think. One of my guests just said they freak out.
Oh yeah, I do freak out every so often. I have found myself a couple of times in my garden at midnight, wanting to cry, looking at the moon, going, "What have you done, Olivia? You know, seriously, what have you just launched?" And you know, and I do have this moment of insecurities going, you know, can I pull this off? Am I really the right person for it? And I have these little moments, and they usually happen late at night when I'm having a bit of an insomniac kind of evening, going, oh God, what am I doing? But then I wake up the next day and I said, well, I know why I'm doing it, so just keep going, and you'll be fine. But I think we've all got moments of being overwhelmed or insecure or
totally, yeah, totally. And I think it's always great to hear, and that's why that's why I always ask that question, because I just know that everybody feels like that at some point. And it's not, as you say, it's not something to feel bad about. It happens. So Olivia, setting up your business or businesses, what have been, do you think, the main challenges for you, especially with a magazine? There must have been a few, I guess.
Yes, I think the main challenge is creating a magazine, but not coming from a publishing background. So I think that creates its own challenge of, you know, is this what people want to read? Is this how you even do a magazine? So I'm constantly on learning on how to even create a magazine that people will want to read. So that's the first challenge. And second challenge, I guess, is not having the team, or not having the budget to start building the team. Because I know if I had more team, I could maybe go a little bit faster, you know, if I had support in other areas. So I think not having that support and having to do it yourself is a challenge. Yeah, I think that's kind of the two main challenges that I've come across.
Well, I think everyone has their separate challenges. It's just kind of good to know that, you know, people do have challenges, and you just have to sort of manage them, and you will get over them. So Olivia, you must have at some point some time to yourself. Even if it's the odd 5 minutes. So what does Olivia do to sort of chill out?
To chill out, Netflix. I'm addicted to the series Suits at the moment. I don't know why, completely addicted to it. But so I will come back down in the office. I tend to work quite late as well, so I will always have an hour where I have a little Netflix 1 hour episode, and then I go back to work. But I'll be honest with you, Tracy, before lockdown, I was addicted to body combat. I used to go 3 times a week. And I even started inquiring about local boxing clubs, and it's just something about the whole boxing thing that I really enjoyed. Then obviously COVID happened, and I haven't done any sports since then. It's terrible. I've put on weight, and well, obviously during lockdown I couldn't do anything, and then I couldn't get the motivation to do it at home. And then the magazine is taking so much of my time, so I haven't really gone back to having that kind of moment for myself. But otherwise, I love nature. I love going out for walks. I do try and go out 4 times a day, every day. I live in the countryside, so I tend to just go out, go for a nice walk, get some fresh air, wake up the brain. But yes, like, there's not a lot of time, I have to admit, at the moment.
No, I kind of got that impression, and I was thinking, I'm sure she gets the odd 5 minutes. I just kind of like to ask people, because it kind of gives a sense of who you are. But I think one thing, you know, even for me, I find that sometimes when you've been like very focused, just to get outside and breathe fresh air, even if you just go out for a short space of time, but it's just being out, isn't it? And get the air. And in fact, I was talking to another guest, and we were talking about the whole sensory thing of breathing and breathing properly, which I think has become a big thing. But it really, actually, it is hugely beneficial. Now, you talk about obviously talking about the magazine. Would you just like to share with the listeners how they could find Brand New and maybe subscribe to your magazine, please?
Yes, with pleasure. So if you like the sound of this magazine and you think it's for you, you can come and check us out on our website, which is brandnewmagazine.co.uk. We're also on Instagram at brandnew_magazine, or you can find us as well on LinkedIn or on Facebook. The subscription, you can subscribe to a print copy, and it's a rolling subscription. So every month you will get a new copy of the magazine, or you can also subscribe to the digital issue, and all that information is on our website.
Yeah, and I think that's great as well, because the fact that you subscribe per edition, don't you? So actually, if at some point you think, well, you know, maybe I don't want to do it at the moment, or I'm going away or something, but then even saying that, of course, you can have it digitally, which is great. And having that option, I think, is really nice. It's really good. So when it comes to the end, I always like to sort of finish really by asking my guest if they had one piece of advice they would give anyone else, maybe thinking about setting up a magazine or even setting up in business. It doesn't have to be one. I'm always a bit flexible on that, but
I think number one is, you know, do your research. Obviously, don't go in blind. Do a minimum of research to find out if there's a market for your product or service. But I think I work a lot out of passion and gut feelings and creativity. So I think for me is, if you've got an idea in your head, then follow your dreams and follow your gut feeling. If you feel like it's going to be a good business, then follow that internal voice and be creative with it. That's my advice.
No, that's great advice, I think, because many people, I think, in business always say you need to be passionate about your business. You know, to be something that you really feel strongly about and you're passionate about, because you've got to give it a lot of time. Thank you so much for being a guest on my With Tracy podcast. It's been an absolute delight, and learning and getting a little bit of an insight into what it's like to run a magazine and set up a magazine, which I know is a snippet. So it would be great. I'm sort of asking all my guests is at some point they come back and give us a kind of an update on their journey. So it'd be lovely to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come back and tell you all about the evolution. Yeah, maybe in 6 months or, but no, with pleasure. And it's been great chatting to you. And I hope that your audience got a bit of a good idea what the magazine is all about and why it was created and what we're trying to achieve with it. So no, it's been my pleasure to come and talk to you today.
Oh no, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much, Olivia.